Hey everyone, I'm John, and welcome back to another episode of Boot and Wildlife. Many people seem to think that you can only find wild animals deep in the woods, far away from civilization in our national parks, more remote areas. And I used to think that too until I discovered the world of backyard wildlife. Here in Boot, New Jersey, right in my own backyard, I've been able to find a wide variety of amazing species, as well as some pretty dramatic moments. So today, I'm going to share with you some of those creatures and moments, and hopefully inspire you to take a closer look at your backyard, and appreciate these creatures that share a home with you. So be sure to subscribe, and I hope you enjoy. When I was a kid, I remember waking up nearly every morning to the lonely, mystic song of the mourning dove. These delightful birds can be found in meadows, forests, and backyards across the country. In early spring, doves pair up for the breeding season. Mourning doves are typically monogamous, like many birds, meaning that they mate for life. Once together, they'll start scouting out nesting locations. It turns out my house makes for a perfect spot. It offers protection from wind, rain, and predators. The doves quickly begin the process of nest building, scouring the ground for sticks and twigs. The nest is fairly simple in design, but it's good enough to raise chicks. In a nearby tree, another dove family cares for their nestlings. Perhaps the most unique behavior of doves is how they feed their young. Doves make a milky substance in their crop, known as pigeon's milk. While not true milk, it is full of antioxidants and immune boosters, which help the young grow. Another familiar song I often hear belongs to the American robin, an icon of suburban wildlife. These serenading members of the thrush family can often be seen hopping along lawns in pursuit of their favorite meal, earthworms. In order to find these worms, robins hop around and stop every now and then to search for movement. Once it finds a worm, it cocks its head back and forth to make sure. Then it strikes. The eastern bluebird is a true gem of the wild, and is the holy grail for many backyard birders. Everyone wants one of these beautiful birds to visit their yard, but few succeed, and for good reason. For one thing, bluebirds aren't seed eaters, they're insectivores, oftentimes perching on a branch or fence post and swooping down like a hawk at unsuspecting grasshoppers. Because of this, they don't often visit bird feeders. Bluebirds also aren't forest dwellers and prefer wide open spaces like fields, marshes, and meadows. Bluebirds also require tree cavities for nesting. However, they have taken a liking to man-made nest boxes. Living in a more open area improves your chances of seeing bluebirds, as well as putting up a nest box and growing native plant species. Another field-dwelling bird is the swallow. The barn and tree swallows are two of the most common species that you'll be able to find. After a long day of hunting for insects, these swallows need a place to rest, and this large house is a perfect spot. Someday this house may also become a nesting location. Historically, swallows would nest on cliff sides. However, in recent years, they've adapted to build nests on and under man-made structures. Swallows are insectivores, feeding on flying insects. These incredibly swift birds are perfectly designed for catching insects on the wing. Perhaps the largest bird that you'll come across in your neighborhood is the turkey. Once critically endangered, the wild turkey has made an incredible comeback, and is now increasingly common across America adapting well to the suburban landscape. During spring, the males, known as gobblers, search for females, known as hens. The gobblers get their name from their famous call, which is used to attract females. With no luck finding any hens, the gobbler heads into the forest, where he gets some rest in the shade. You may not realize it, but nearly any place can be a hotspot for wildlife, like this knotweed bush. Insects are perhaps the most unique of all wildlife. While not as beloved as other creatures, they are still incredibly fascinating and lead just as thrilling and dramatic lives as any other species in nature. This bush is like a watering hole of the pollinating insect world. Various pollinating insects, such as bees and butterflies, gather here to sip on the sweet nectar, and the predators know this. A large European hornet has caught himself a mud dauber wasp. The helpless wasp is torn apart limb by limb from the hornet's sharp mandibles. He tears off the limbs, wings, and head, making it easier to carry back to the hive. Like vultures, a group of gnats swarm the kill to feed on whatever they can. The world of insects is one we often don't think about. However, dramatic moments like this happen every day, right in our own backyards. The kind of wildlife that can be found in your yard will vary depending on where you live. Here in Boone, New Jersey, I'm lucky enough to have a pair of peregrine falcons living at the bridge by my house. While they naturally nest on cliffs, in recent years, these birds have been seen nesting on bridges and buildings, becoming a fairly common urban sighting. This year, I came across something truly amazing, a falcon fledgling, the first one I've ever seen from this pair. After just leaving the nest, he's still learning to fly and is dependent on his parents for food. In the meantime, he'll sit on this small perch, stretching out his wings and practicing flying. Blue jays are known for their aggressive tendencies and will attack birds much larger than they are. The territorial blue jay sees this young fledgling as a threat and tries to push him out of his territory. In time, the blue jay will fear the falcon, as these are the fastest predators on the planet. While you may not live by a falcon nest, you can still observe wild birds of prey right in your own backyard. Various hawk species are common backyard visitors, such as the red-tail, sharp-shinned, and Cooper's hawk. In the United States, about 57 million people put out bird feeders just to get a glance at some of these beautiful creatures. However, when you put out a bird feeder, there's a chance you'll attract more than just birds. The eastern chipmunk is a small ground squirrel that has adapted well to the world of man. Life in the suburbs provides chipmunks with various food opportunities, but they don't always come easy. This chipmunk scurries beneath the bird feeder, collecting any fallen seeds he can find. However, the leftovers of other birds is not nearly enough, so he decides to try his hand at the feeder. This is advertised as a squirrel-proof feeder, and has a mechanism which blocks seed from animals over a certain weight. It looks like this chipmunk is just light enough to fit on the feeder and claim his prized seeds. He won't eat all these seeds now, however. They'll be stored in his flexible cheek pouches, which can hold up to 60 seeds. He'll then take the seeds to his underground burrow, where they'll be hoarded away for the winter. Water is essential for all life, so it's no surprise that areas with water host a wide diversity of wildlife. Ponds are an easily accessible aquatic habitat for many of us. They can be in a public park, your neighborhood, or even your backyard. The bellow of the American bullfrog can be heard in many ponds across the country. Bullfrogs are fairly common across the country, being the largest amphibians throughout much of their range. A pollywog approaches the shore. This is the transitional phase of the bullfrog's complex life cycle. Sunfish are another species that thrive in these small ponds. Here we can see a breeding pair laying eggs on the nest. The nest is created by the male sunfish. Once completed, he then courts a female with various displays and movements. Once a female accepts him, she will lay eggs on the nest as the male fertilizes them. The male sunfish will then guard the nest from any potential threats until the eggs hatch. Snakes are another reptile that inhabits urban areas. Garter snakes are the species you'll most likely come across in your yard. These snakes can be identified by the black or brown bodies, and 2 yellow stripes that go down the whole length of the body. While most people don't want a snake on their property, these reptiles can be quite beneficial, feeding on various rodents and insects that cause damage to your garden, yard, and home. Most snakes you'll come across in suburbia are non-venomous. That being said, if you cannot properly identify a snake species, it's best to leave it be. Learning to identify the species that you share a neighborhood with is a useful skill and makes backyard wildlife watching much more enjoyable. I'd recommend getting a field guide or doing some research online. I'll put some books and resources that I personally use in the description below. Box turtles are a terrestrial turtle species that often finds itself in our yards. Their orange and black pattern allows them to camouflage well to the forest floor. The box turtle is named for its unique ability to shut completely into its shell when threatened. With its heads and limbs secure, the turtle waits patiently for the coast to be clear. Raccoons are perhaps the most famous of backyard critters. These sly mammals are masters of adaptation, thriving in all sorts of habitats, especially urban settings. Raccoons use their sense of sight, smell, and touch in order to find food, which could be anything from crayfish to carrion, and birdseed to our weekly trash. While the spread of urbanization has been harmful to many creatures, it has greatly benefited raccoons. Studies have shown that raccoons born and raised in the suburbs and cities are smarter than their country cousins. This mother and her kids take refuge in a hollowed-out tree for an afternoon nap. Or at least, that's what the mother is trying to do. The ever-curious kits make resting very difficult. In many neighborhoods, whitetails are the largest creatures you'll find. While they are often associated with deep woodlands and farm fields, whitetails are extremely adaptable and have become an increasingly popular sight in backyards. In the springtime, you might be lucky enough to see a precious little fawn feeding on grasses and clover in your yard. Or later on in the year, you may find a large muscular buck in search of does. Late autumn is the whitetail's breeding season, also known as the rut. Amidst the confusion of the rut, a buck may find himself in another buck's territory, and when that happens, a fight may follow. With antlers locked, the bucks will duel till one is defeated. The weaker buck retreats to the forest. You don't have to travel far to see wild and dramatic moments such as this. These kind of events happen nearly every day in backyards across America. I hope you enjoyed that little adventure into the world of backyard wildlife, and I hope that you're now inspired to explore the wildlife around you. If you have any questions about backyard wildlife, leave a comment and I'll see you next time.